Hey y'all, if you're in the mood for a drinking game, and of course be responsible, I'm talking about like with chocolate milk or hot cocoa or something. What you can do is take a drink every time I miss an offhand ascending cut. That'll give you plenty of drinks. Have fun. Happy St. Patrick's Day, fellow sword nerds. In honor of St. Patrick's Day, I've got a couple of ring hilted longswords here. Of course, that's a distinctive Irish style of pommel. I had the good fortune many years ago to take a hiking trip to Ireland. I spent most of the time in southwest Ireland in Killarney, Kerry, Cork, that kind of area. But also went to the Dublin Museum, got to visit several castles, and saw the swords in the Dublin Museum. And some really neat and interesting swords. And the Irish have several different kinds of distinct weapons over the years that are worth investigating. So these two swords are, one is 10 times the cost of the other. Over here, the black sword is a recent purchase I got off of Amazon. It's about $160 something dollars with taxes and shipping. And over here, about 10 times the cost of that is this Valiant Armory war sword here. So let's take a quick look at them. So for a $160 sword, pretty impressed so far with this sword. Today will be my first time cutting with it, so we'll see how it does. Scabbard's pretty nice. This suspension system is, of course, not historically accurate, but I'm just happy that it comes with one. Another thing that I'm happy it comes with is the fact that it's got these little snap buttons on here, which means it's easy to reverse these. And that's important for me because I'm left-handed. Whereas, I bought this blade at Blade Show. If I had custom ordered it off of Valiant Armory's website, they would have already had it left-handed for me. But basically, I'll need to retie these so it's reversed and pointing the other way if I ever actually want to wear the suspension system with the decorated side of the scabbard out. And of course, the scabbard does have quite lovely decorations on it. There's a look at the shape they come with. This scabbard is also very thin and light, which is pretty historical, of course. So that makes it a lot more comfortable to wear if you're actually going to use it for some kind of historical, recreation, and it's in a historical style as opposed to this one. So let's look at the hilt over here. I've had this one for a couple of years, so it's got some mild staining and stuff on it. I had a couple of issues here. After I cut with this the first time, this hilt had a little bit of a wiggle in it, just a small one, but I was able to shim it with some leather and fix it myself. I contacted Valiant about that, and they offered to have it sent in and fixed for me, but I just didn't see it as a big issue, and it's not the first time this had happened to me with a sword. It happens, it's not like it happens every other sword or something, but every 7th or 8th or 10th sword, some type of small wiggle and hilt components like this has to be adjusted on. If it were super mega loose and it was like just clanging around and there's like a 1/4 inch gap in there, that's a different story. But it was just a small amount of play and wiggle in there. This handle, I had it sitting above a heat source in my living room for a long time, and the leather on the handle ended up fading and yellowing somewhat. And the leather on the scabbard did not do that, even though they were both over the heat source, which is kind of interesting. But I took some epoxy and some epoxy dye, and I dyed the epoxy back to the green I wanted and put just a light coating of that dyed epoxy over the green leather, and that seemed to have worked out well. There are other ways to deal with that, but that's one. And this one, the edges very clean and defined, but also a little bit of a rub for me because I am usually going to have my hand, especially on the pommel, kind of having the palm swell sitting on it like that. Sometimes maybe even a little further with the pinky on it, some, depending on the specific pommel. Rarely would I grab an entire pommel like this. You know, maybe in certain specific circumstances, but usually just going to kind of use part of the pommel like that. But anyway, it was kind of biting into my palm a little bit, so I kind of chamfered this a little bit. And the same thing up here on the guard, did a little light chamfering here. Now this one is extremely chamfered on all the different sections of it. So it's very comfortable, there's no rubbing there. So that was a nice little touch. This one is peened, and this one has a little hexagonal screw in here, I'm assuming. I don't know if the handle is glued on or not, but I have several Angus trims that are made this way, where the handle, the entire hilt is removable. And I gotta say, I really appreciate that. It's been handy in a number of ways for me with his swords, and I've never had a problem with it, with the durability of the sword because of that. But like I said, I haven't tried to take apart this hilt and see if that's the case with this or not, just noting that it's constructed that way. All right, so let's look at the blades. Okay, here you can see the blades. You can see the Chinese ring hilt is a later period longsword with a longer, narrower blade with a more acute point on it. I would call the war sword here from Valiant Armory a 12A, and I would call this one probably an 18A. You know, you could argue for 16, but it's kind of narrow. And by the way, Oakeshot's typology is not perfect, and there's certainly some subjectivity involved in it as well. So you just have to kind of bear that in mind. Like so many different ways of categorizing things, there's a little bit of imperfection and ambiguity and subjectivity involved. Anyway, so you got, this blade is a little more thick and robust overall, as you would expect from this type of blade that's kind of thinking a little more about balancing stiffness of thrust and having moderate cutting ability instead of fantastic cutting ability, and being able to deal with a more armored opponent. This one is very pokey, but it's got a lot more flex and a lot narrower blade that is you know, going to flex more when you try to thrust with it. So against a heavier armored opponent, your thrust is going to be a little more difficult. But this one should, between the fact that it is both wider and narrower in this direction, should cut a good deal better than this one. Where this one's biased toward cut, this one is biased a little more toward the thrust, though they're both cut and thrust swords that can kind of do both. So let's do some cutting and see how that works out. All right, let's see how this Amazon ring hilt handles. Good. Sword isn't overly heavy. It's fairly beefy. I mean, it's still wieldable in one hand, but it's not super spry in one hand. And for a lot of swords in this category, that would be the case, is they've got a certain kind of beefiness to them for dealing with armor. And there's several reasons for that. One is to make the blade more robust and survivable, to give it more stiffness in the thrust. Yep. And it also causes more percussive damage when you're giving a blow to someone in armor, because it's really going to be a blow, not a cut. But as you can see, it still can cut. So, try that with the false edge. So the top edge instead. Oh! Doesn't work if you hit the stand, does it? Try again. Oh! I made him bleed out. Let's try the false edge from this side. Let's try this one-handed. This is not the edge that came with it. I sharpened it beforehand. I do that with all my swords. If it doesn't have the edge that I think is going to perform well, then there's no point in cutting with it. I mean, you know, it's like buying a 4x4 that doesn't have off-road tires and trying to go off-roading in it in street tires. So, sharpening your swords is something you need to know how to do. So, pretty cool sword for 150 something bucks plus tax and shipping. I mean, it's a pretty nice long sword. Feels pretty solid, reasonably historical. I think the cross guard and the shape of the handle and everything, very attractive overall. Pretty cool. Love wide blades. The sword feels a lot lighter and more wieldable, even though it looks beefier because of the silhouette of that blade. Let's go for a 3-bottle cut, see what we can do. Pretty good, as I would expect from the cutting ability of the sword. So you can see a little bit of a difference in just how slicey, choppy this sword is. Against a lighter armored opponent, this thing's really devastating. Let's try it one-handed. Scoop that one a little bit, still made it through, because that blade profile, it's a tad more forgiving. Let's try an ascending cut. Do one from the other side. Let's do a false edge from that side. Oh, screwed that up. Guess who needs to work on their false edge cut from that side? This guy. Real bad. All right, let's try it with the strong edge. Not making it. It's humiliating. Did I get a different sword all of a sudden? Nope. It me, not sword. Alright, let's try again. Dork. Alright, let's try again. Oh! Alright, let's try again. Try it from the other side. This is one side I cannot do. I wonder what's going on there. Well, but I can get it one-handed. Nope. What is off of my trajectory today? There we go, finally. So, impressive cutting sword. Lots of flex, unlike the other one. So, a couple cool ring hilts. Always thought ring hilts were gorgeous, good looking swords. So, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Drink responsibly. Have a good time.